Hi everybody, welcome back to Leah's Library. Today we're going to read Curious George books. I've got 3 really great books, all of them with Curious George in them. The first one is Curious George's Dinosaur Discovery. If you like dinosaurs, this is a really fun book. The next one is called Curious George Goes to the Bookstore. I love the bookstore. And then our third today is called Curious George Says Thank You. All right, let's dive right on in. Come on, George, let's discover some dinosaurs. Curious George Dinosaur Discovery. Written by Catherine Hapka, illustrated in the style of H.A. Ray by Anna Grossnickle Hines. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. George loved to go places with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. One of their favorite places to visit was the Dinosaur Museum. Today is a special day, George's friend said. We are going to do something very interesting. George was curious. What could be more interesting than a trip to the Dinosaur Museum? The man with the yellow hat led the way through the museum. George wanted to stop and look at the dinosaur bones, but his friend kept going, so George kept following. Finally, they walked right out the back door. Where could they be going? A van was waiting for them outside. Climb on in, George, said the man with the yellow hat. George looked out the window as the van drove off. Where could they be going? At last, the van reached a rocky quarry. Dozens of people were there. Some were digging with shovels, and others were using pickaxes or other kinds of tools. Do you know what a quarry is? A quarry is like a big digging site, oftentimes for rock or different types of gravel or dirt or dinosaur bones. Surprise, said George's friend. We're going to help the museum scientists dig for dinosaur bones. George was curious. Were there really dinosaurs buried in the quarry? He ran over for a better look. Hello, said a friendly scientist. Are you here to help with the dig? George watched the scientist work. She dug up some dirt and put it into her sifting pan. It took a long time to sift it, and in the end, no dinosaur bones. Oh well, she said, time to try again. But the next pan was empty too. So was the next one, and the one after that. George yawned. So far, digging for dinosaurs was not as exciting as he had expected. Oh, he looks a little bored. But George was curious. Could he help to find dinosaur bones? What do you think he's thinking about doing? He found a spare shovel lying nearby. He dug and dug, but he didn't find any dinosaurs. When he climbed out of his hole, George spotted another scientist. He was dusting something with a small brush. Oh well, said the scientist, it's not a bone, just a rock. George wanted to help. He picked up a brush and went to work. But it turns out that monkeys are not very good at dusting. Look at that. He has 3 brushes. That might make a lot of dust. As he hurried away from the cloud of dust, George bumped into a wheelbarrow. Maybe there were dinosaur bones in it. He climbed up to look inside, but the wheelbarrow was awfully tippy. Crash! George, the wheelbarrow, and a whole lot of dirt went flying. "Hey!" someone cried. "What's that monkey doing?" George scampered away, straight up the cliff. Monkeys are good at climbing, so George kept going, higher and higher. You see him way up there? When he got to the top, he accidentally knocked a stone over the edge. That stone hit another stone, which hit another stone, and another. Run, turtle, run! Oh no, a rock slide! Look at all those rocks. The man with the yellow hat called for George to come down. George wanted to climb down, but he was afraid the scientists would be angry with him. But the scientists didn't look angry. "Look!" one cried, pointing. "Look what that monkey just uncovered!" What do you see there in that dirt? George could hardly believe what he saw. Dinosaur bones! After that, the dinosaur dig was even more fun. George helped the scientists dig and sift and dust. Look, he's using just one brush there. And to take photographs of the bones that he had found. And the next time that he and the man with the yellow hat visited the dinosaur museum, George got to see his dinosaur on display. Nice job, George. The end. There he is, digging with the shovel. He is an awfully curious monkey, isn't he? Well, let's read about Curious George going to a bookstore. Have you ever been to a bookstore? I love bookstores and libraries. Look at all those kids reading. Curious George Goes to a Bookstore. Written by Julie M. Bartynski. Illustrated in the style of H.A. Ray by Mary O'Keefe Young. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were going to the grand opening of a bookstore in their neighborhood. George's favorite author was going to be signing her latest Penny the Penguin picture book. He had every penny book she'd ever written. He couldn't wait to meet her. That's exciting. But when they arrived at the bookstore, they found a long line that zigzagged between the bookshelves. "We'll purchase the book first and then wait in line to get it signed," said his friend. "There are a lot of kids who also love Penny the Penguin." Look at all those people. The line inched forward and stopped, inched forward and stopped. George climbed onto his friend's shoulders and tried to take a peek at the author, but he was small and she was hidden by the crowd. around the bookstore. So many new books. What stories would they hold inside? What funny characters would he meet? "Be a good little monkey and don't wander off too far," said the man with the yellow hat, letting George down and picking up a bird-watching guide from a nearby shelf. "You wouldn't want to miss getting your book signed." George was happily flipping through storybooks when he noticed a wonderful smell of banana bread. It made his stomach rumble. George was curious. Could there be food in a bookstore? Food and drink were not allowed at the library. George decided to find out. As soon as he turned the corner, he discovered glass shelves filled with baked goods instead of books. It was a small cafe. Next to the cabinet was a table with a sign advertising free samples. George watched people help themselves to little squares of banana bread. He took one too. Yum! A little girl saw George and tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, look! That monkey likes banana bread too." "Yes, I suppose monkeys would enjoy banana bread," he responded, still looking at his book. While George was reaching for another sample, and then another and another, he saw the little girl and her father leave the cafe area. Tucked under the girl's arm was George's favorite dinosaur book. He decided to follow. They led him past a display of dinosaur books in the science area of the store. The display was as tall as the man with the yellow hat. It was hard to resist for a little monkey who loves to climb. Uh-oh. Can you guess what's happening? George climbed onto the first tier. With so many books to look at, he wasn't sure where to start. He saw his favorite dinosaur book, but he also saw other books. One pictured an apatosaurus eating leaves, and another showed pterodactyls soaring above waterfalls. He climbed from tier to tier until he reached the top. From above, he noticed a stack of boxes in the corner of the store. The boxes were shaped like presents, but the bows and wrapping paper were missing. What could be inside them? Curious George. George leapt down and opened the boxes. Each one contained a stack of newest Penny the Penguin picture books. George wondered, why were all the books in boxes? They should be in a big display like the dinosaur books. George had an idea. George got right to work. He balanced the books one by one, as if he were building with blocks. People in line marveled at what he was doing, except for the man with the yellow hat, who was engrossed in his new bird-watching guide. Do you know what engrossed means? It means that he was paying so much attention to his book that he didn't notice anything going on around him. The tower of books grew and grew and grew, and so did the crowd's amazement. "What a wonderful display," said a woman. "Wow, look what that monkey made," exclaimed a little boy. Oh, I think I skipped a page. There we go. "Stop!" shouted a nearby bookseller. "You shouldn't have opened those boxes." But George was having too much fun to notice. From the top of his display, George looked down and finally saw the bookseller, the manager, and the man with the yellow hat peering up at him. "That monkey opened all our boxes for the signing," complained the bookseller. The manager smiled at George. "He certainly did, and now we don't have to. I think his tower of books is a masterpiece." The manager asked George if he would like to help with the signing. George was delighted. He would finally get to meet his favorite author. George made sure that each book was opened to the right page, ready for the author's signature. He thought it was funny that her name was Penny, just like the penguin in her books. As she finished signing the last book, Penny turned to George and smiled. "Thank you so much for all your help today. It was great to have extra hands and feet. But there's one book I still need to sign." She inscribed the book and handed it to George. Inside was a note saying, "To my new friend George. Keep reading. Signed, Penny." Look at that. She drew a picture of Penny the penguin hugging George. That's very special. George loved his new book. It was special and one of a kind. He'd had such an adventurous day at the bookstore, he couldn't wait to visit again. The end. There he is, sitting in the boxes of books. He always seems to help out when he's curious, doesn't he? Our third book today is called Curious George Says Thank You. Here we go. Written by Emily Flaschner Meyer and Julie M. Bartynski. Illustrated in the style of H.A. Ray by Anna Grossnickle Hines. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today George received a surprise in the mail. "It looks like you've got a card, George," said the man with the yellow hat. It was a thank you card from George's neighbor Betsy. "Dear George, thank you so much for your birthday present. I'm putting the stickers you gave me on everything, even this card. Sincerely, Betsy." The card made George smile. It also made him curious. Who could he give a thank you card to? George thought and thought. He could send one to the Science Museum director, Dr. Lee, who had shown George her favorite collection of dinosaur fossils. Of course, there was also the librarian who helped him pick out books. The store clerk at the market always saved the best bananas for him. And his friend Bill let George fly his kite at the park. George had so many people to thank, he had to get started right away. First, he gathered paper, envelopes, crayons, and stickers. Then he got to work. The man with the yellow hat walked in to find George covered from head to toe. "Oh, George, what are you doing?" George held up Betsy's card and pointed to the papers around him. "Oh, I see, George," said his friend. "You're making your own thank you cards. What a nice idea. Would you like some help?" The man with the yellow hat wrote while George decorated. George was having so much fun that they even made a stack of extra cards. "We can hand-deliver these tomorrow. Everyone will be happy to see you, George." Their first stop was the Science Museum. "George, it's so good to see you," said Dr. Lee. "What a lovely card! I'm going to hang it in my office right away." Next, they stopped at the library. "What a great card," the librarian said. "I'm going to set it here on my desk where everyone can see it. George, we have some new books in the children's section that you might like if you have time." George looked at his friend. "All right," the man said. "I will go get a book for myself." George noticed the mail carrier leaving the library. She was the one who had brought George his thank you card in the first place. He wanted to give her one of his cards too. George hurried out the door. Could he catch her in time? George jumped up and down on the steps, waving a card, but a group of children was just getting off a bus. They were coming to the library for story hour. George couldn't see which way the mail carrier had gone. But oh, there was a street light nearby. There, you see it right there? Oops, there's the light. George was curious. Maybe if he climbed it, he could see where the mail carrier was going. George started to climb the streetlight as fast as only a monkey can. But when he was halfway up the pole, his bag slipped off. In an instant, all of George's thank you cards went whirling through the air. Oh no! How would George deliver his cards now? Look at those cards, they're everywhere. George slid down the pole and grabbed at the cards swirling all around him. A boy looked up. "Hey, it's snowing mail!" A little girl said. "Don't worry, little monkey. We'll help you pick up your cards." The children gathered up the cards. George was very grateful for their help. He was also grateful that he had brought extra cards. He decided to give them to all of the children. "These cards are so nice," said the teacher. The man with the yellow hat came hurrying down the steps. "George, I didn't see you leave. It looks like you've had quite an adventure out here." The man thanked the teacher and his students for helping George. "Let's finish delivering those thank you cards," said the man. George and his friends stopped by the market and the park and then headed home. George felt a little sad that he hadn't caught up to the mail carrier. But wait! Who was that at George's house? George proudly gave her a thank you card. "Wow, George," said the mail carrier. "I'm usually the one delivering the cards. This sure is a treat." George waved goodbye. He and the man went into their house. But George had one more very special thank you card to deliver. He had saved the best for last. He put stickers all over that man's hat to say thank you. What a sweet and thoughtful monkey. The end. Thanks, George. And thank you guys. We'll see you next time with 3 more books. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.